The Wall Street salaries for college grads are completely on fire right now. The vast majority of investment banks raised the entry-level salaries to $100,000 or more over the past few weeks and months. And that's certainly much more than I ever made in my first year when I started at Deutsche Bank a long time ago. So the question is, how and why did this happen? But most importantly, the question is really, how can you get in the game and start making this kind of money straight after college? All right, 3 things I want to talk about today. Number 1, how did the college grads manage to turn the tables on Wall Street banks and get paid 6 figures straight out of college? Number 2, how did the Wall Street banks respond to this mini crisis in terms of salaries and quality of life balance? And number 3, and this is really the most important section here, is how can you get in the game and get these super demanding and highly paying jobs? So here's the first question. How did this really happen? How did college grads manage to get paid 6 figures on Wall Street in the middle of the pandemic? And it's really no surprise that this whole thing started at Goldman Sachs, because most interesting things typically start at Goldman Sachs. And you may remember in 2009 the nickname that Goldman got from a financial journalist, which was a giant vampire squid wrapped around the face of humanity for the role that they played in the 2007-8 financial crisis. But here in March 2021, so a few months ago, a group of 13 analysts in the first year into their job put together a PowerPoint presentation where they effectively detailed these grueling 100-hour work weeks, sleepless nights, no weekends, absolutely disastrous lifestyle, health issues, heart palpitations, mental issues. And this was in a way a sign of the COVID era, right, that we're living through, because typically on Wall Street the mantra is work hard, play hard. But here it was work hard, sit on the couch. And so initially Wall Street, people didn't really know how to react. You had companies like Cantor Fitzgerald, for example, or some old-timers Wall Street CEOs that basically said, well, this is the job, put up with it. But then over time, there were expressions of sympathy, free vacation packages started appearing, free Peloton bikes, and that ultimately led to salary raises. So college grads now really feel that they have the upper hand because there's a true war on talent, high turnover, high burnout, and banks really don't have much choice but to pay up for these first-year analysts because they still need these people to do the work. Now let's talk about the response by Wall Street banks, because when a few first banks started raising salaries and put it up at $100,000, Goldman actually thought this was just a marketing gimmick, just to attract more talent and take the headlines. But by August 2021, they came around and in fact took the pole position briefly when they started paying $110,000 for first-year analysts. And a week later, a boutique advisory firm called Evercore put it up at $120,000. So this is a real raise here. And you see this on the chart here, where initially everybody was at $85,000 for the first year analysts. Now we are somewhere between 100 and 110 and 120 for Evercore. So this is a meaningful bump in terms of salaries. And the dilemma here, of course, is, understanding the balance between the quality of life and the amount of work that you're doing and what you're getting paid for it. And in fact, Wall Street banks really couldn't do all that much. Most banks kind of did some cosmetic changes, guaranteed Saturdays off, but the work still has to be done. So these people still work really these grueling work weeks, and that kind of continues. But Wall Street banks are just throwing more money at the problem. And when you think about $100,000 as an entry-level salary after college, this is 5 times the median salary for a US college grad. So this is a meaningful difference in terms of what you're getting paid when you join these Wall Street banks. And really the entry-level salary, that's just an appetizer, right? In terms of the whole compensation when you look 5-10 years forward, because it's all about the years ahead of you, the exponential growth of what you're getting paid and the ultimate bonuses that lead to 7-figure pay packages. So the question really here is this the best time to join Wall Street banks in terms of pay? Absolutely. Is this also the worst time to join Wall Street banks in terms of quality of life? Absolutely. Now let's talk about how to actually get in. And I want to share my personal experience for a minute, because so much has been written about how tough it is to get in these jobs and how tough it is to stay in there and these grueling work weeks. This is not the case for all jobs in investment banking. And I remember when I was still in my business school, I did an internship with UBS in mergers and acquisitions, the hardcore type of investment banking. And I hated it. The first week, I kind of knew immediately that this was really not for me. And a few weeks later, I stumbled onto the trading floor at UBS, the equity derivatives trading floor, and I immediately knew that this was it for me. I saw people with 2 phones in their hands, shouting across the aisle, 7 screens in front of them, lights blinking left and right. This was completely different to the stale, silent area that I worked in until then in mergers and acquisitions, putting together PowerPoint presentations. So this is where the importance of internships and testing the water really comes in. And so how to come in, how to get in, what is the kind of the basic formula? Well, the easiest path and the basic formula to get into investment banking, into one of these jobs, is really 3 steps, right? First is study at a top university. Study at a university that these institutions, these banks recruit from. They have a list for every single country, depending on where you are, of schools and business schools that they recruit from. So you ideally want to be in one of the good ones. Then you want to do the right internships. So that really helps because it shows interest, it shows some experience, and you have something to talk about in the interview. And then hopefully you get offered a job at the end of your internship for the following year. But even if you don't, if you have these internships on your resume and then apply to other banks later on, that still helps you get in the door, pass these interviews, and get a job offer. So this is what I did, for example, 20 years ago. Now, you don't necessarily have to do internships at investment banks. You can do internships at a hedge fund, at a venture capital firm, private equity firm, wealth management, one of the 4 big accounting firms. So it almost doesn't matter, but as long as it's related to a finance area. And even if you're not in finance, let's say you're not studying a finance major at your university, you're doing a history major or languages. We had people like this in my graduate class at Deutsche Bank when I started. So banks will still recruit from these areas as well, as long as you show interest in finance and maybe have a couple of internships on your resume. So this is still possible. Now, moving away from the undergraduate type of a path to, let's say, an MBA type of a path, right? So a lot of people spend years working in an area that's not finance related, and they realize they in fact want to go into finance, into investment banking or one of these areas. They go and do an MBA. Then it's a lot easier for them to apply to these investment banks or finance firms with an MBA and enter at a higher level, right? They're entering at the associate or vice president level. So this is a lot easier as well. And so what is going to help you do that? A couple more things are going to help you. One, really the power of networking. When you talk to people that have spent some time working in various different types of jobs, they will tell you that the best jobs they ever got to was through the power of their network. Most people get hired because they know somebody that knows them and they want to work with them. This is really how it works. So networking is absolutely crucial, and this starts from day one, from the moment you enter university, because the people that you study with will eventually be the people that will be spread out across the industries that you will end up working with. But also networking means contacting your alumni network, being on LinkedIn and having a decent profile on LinkedIn, and simply reaching out to people, whether it's through family and friends. So networking is absolutely crucial, and I couldn't say this often enough, that networking is really how you get into these jobs primarily. Now, the next one is, let's say you are studying in a non-finance related type of a field, or maybe you don't know much about finance. Well, or maybe you are not in the right college. You're not at the university that typically these banks recruit from. Well, luckily these days there are a ton of online courses that you can take from reputable institutions that will help you improve that resume, improve that site, and make you more hireable, right? A few weeks ago, I put together a video on the best courses to get into investment banking, and the link's below the video. You can go check it out. But effectively, I talk about courses from reputable institutions like Harvard, Yale, INSEAD, Wharton, that help you get on the track of understanding finance, various types of finance fields, from the traditional valuation style to fintech areas. And you have all these courses that today give you that credibility on the resume. And so that really kind of leads me to the last area I want to talk to, and that's you want to do something that I call bankifying your resume. You want to bankify your resume, and that means ideally having the 3 things that recruiters look for on your resume, because no recruiter will spend 10 minutes reading your one-pager resume. Typically, research shows that recruiters spend about 7 seconds on average reading your resume. And so you want to have 3 things, really. You want to have a great university name, or if you don't have a great university name, you want to have a ton of these other courses that you can put on from places like Yale, like Wharton, like INSEAD, really big, reputable Ivy League type of business schools that will kind of complement whatever university you studied at. You want to have great internships. You want to have proven that you hopefully worked, have some experience that's in finance, that is finance related, and that you manage to already get some experience that you can actually talk about in your interviews. And then finally, you want to try to stand out by some kind of academic or non-academic achievements that will really put you above the pile, that will make you memorable. Whether you've tried out for the Tokyo Olympics in swimming, for example, or in fencing, whatever it is. You want to put it on your resume so that you stand out and people really want to feel that they want to meet you. That's all it is about. Look, bottom line is, I think it's just absolutely fantastic that you can now make $100,000 straight out of college in one of these Wall Street jobs. This is completely unprecedented. It's never been done before. And so if you have to sacrifice some weekends and work evenings, well, that's kind of part of it, right? The other side of the coin is the learning curve that is absolutely phenomenal and exponential and very interesting. This is ultimately a very interesting job. And so the real question here is, do you want to do this at an investment bank, or do you want to do this at a private equity firm, at a startup, at a fintech, or go and start your own company? And for some people, the prestige of the name that they work for, of whether it's Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan or Morgan Stanley, it doesn't matter. The prestige is important, the money is important, and for some other people, it's the life-work balance, not killing yourself at the job. So I'd love to know how you think about this. You know, if you apply to one of these banks, how successful were you? How the process was for you? Leave me a comment below. This is really an area that I love talking about, and I'd be interested in how you did, how you got in, and how you're doing if you're working one of these jobs. Anyway, thanks for hanging out today. Make sure you give a like to the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, and I'll see you soon.